Most of my life, I not only got to talk about issues like this through a camera when I was at CNN, or at a lectern when I was teaching at Emory, or in boardrooms when I was at CDC or health ministries around the world. I got to talk about a lot of topics there, of course, and I enjoy doing that, and I sort of miss it. I want in the next couple of sharings with you to get into some of those briefly, sort of as an example of things that we might explore further in those very settings. I'm still able to get around pretty well and enjoy doing so, seeing people one on one in their places. Risk communication is a very important area of public health. And I used to enjoy telling my students that if you're a good risk communicator, you'll also be a good lover. Now, they got a kick out of that. But it's actually true. And you don't even have to be a public health risk communicator. The principles, which are really quite basic, apply almost entirely to every other area. So, hear me out for the next couple of minutes as we touch on some key concepts of risk communication. I helped develop these with people who are far smarter than I am with the World Health Organization and CDC and various other U.S. agencies a while back, and they're relevant to this day. There's five principles of effective risk communication which I turn into T words, which help me remember them, and I think help my students too. Trust, timeliness, transparency, two-way communication, and top-down commitment. Let's go into those briefly. Trust is probably the single most important one for what I hope are obvious reasons. If we can't be trusted, if we can't be believed, obviously, nothing we say is going to sink in. We're going to be viewed with skepticism, if not contempt. And trust goes to our motive, our reason for wanting to communicate certain information, our commitment to honesty, and our competency. That is, our knowledge that we are able to convey information that actually is accurate. So, motive, honesty, and competency are all part of trust. And it really boils down to not only those positives, but also avoiding a very strong negative, and it is don't lie, don't distort, and don't lie. By timely notice, what I mean is the importance of getting information out when people want it and when people need it. Now, you would think that this is a no brainer, and really in television journalism, it tends not to be a problem because it's a competitive business and people are in a mood to get information out as quickly as possible for enhancing their own reputations as news providers and also to beat the competition, to scoop them, if you will. In government and in public health circles in general, it's more of a problem because of the interest of being very deliberate and making sure. Now, these are important reasons, of course, to hold back, but it becomes a rather dangerous cycle of, well, we'll always have tomorrow, rather than finally taking the bull by the horns and getting the information out. So, in effective communication, we do uh, provide timely notice. We have to get the information out there when people want it and when they need it. If we don't, someone else will fill that gap and probably be less credible than we are, assuming this is an area that we have a lot of knowledge about. Transparency, candor, and accountability. Again, this would seem to be a no brainer, but it's a little bit harder than it sounds because transparency involves sharing with people the way you go about getting information, why your information should be believed, what is it about it that makes it worthwhile and good and true, or not. Maybe it is tentative, maybe it is speculative, and part of transparency is admitting what we don't know. Huge problem in science and in clinical medicine for that matter, because a lot of doctors feel that if they don't have the answer that a patient wants, they're disappointing that patient. They're letting them down somehow. And when you apply that to the public health stage, which really is population-based health provision, some of the same thoughts occur that someone who is in a position of authority, who doesn't have the full information at hand, might be reluctant to admit that and may try to bluff her or his way through it, which doesn't work because that goes right up the ladder to trust. If you don't know what you're talking about, chances are you're going to be revealed in that way sooner or later. And that's embarrassing and it also hurts credibility. So, candor about what we know and what we don't know is extremely important in talking transparently to our audiences. Accountability when we make mistakes, admit it. The best person to scoop us on our errors is ourselves, especially if we're in positions of leadership. But again, there is a great temptation to hope no one finds out. That's increasingly hard in the modern communication age. And it again goes to trust. Paradoxically, if we admit error and strive not to repeat it and share really the steps by which we will avoid future errors, it enhances trust. It has the very positive effect of making us stronger communicators. Two-way communication means being a good listener. Again, this should be, go without saying, I suppose, but when we're in positions of leadership, egos are involved here, and there is often this tendency to think, I know what people need to know. They need to just be quiet and let me feed them the information I think is important. Well, that's only part of it. Of course, we want to do that, but we also need to be mindful about what they need to know even if it doesn't make scientific sense for us to go there. That doesn't mean that we cater to whims or to myths or falsehoods. Not at all. What it does do, though, is that we have the opportunity to show respect for the interest that they have in whatever it might be, and then bridge to why we feel this information needs to be supplemented by other information that will probably serve that audience better. But we don't just blow them off. And finally, the fifth T is top-down commitment. And really, in the WHO handbook, that goes to planning and advanced planning. But as I said, I wanted to turn all these into T words, and that's the best I could do with it. What it means is that if we are communicators in an enterprise, in an organization, typically we need the approval of our superiors in order to go forward. And again, when we're going to tell them that involves us being quite open when we drop the ball, when we get things wrong, or admitting what we don't know, along with what we're doing to try to find out. But if we don't show or don't have the commitment of our bosses, if they're too timid, too cowardly, really, to let us go there, then we're gonna the whole house of cards collapse, and all that reflects right back to that original T, which is trust. So the five T's of effective outbreak communication and really communication in general, including solving crises when they occur within our organization, is really fundamentally the same: trust, timely notice, transparency, two-way communication, and top-down commitment. These are effective strategies that will make our messages received better. We're going to have a much better chance of them sinking in, being retained, and getting above those who would try to reach those same audiences with information that is not credible or in their interest. If we are the leaders in a situation, we need to act like them. And that's how you do that by being trustworthy, by providing timely notice, not hemming and hawing forever, being transparent, that is, sharing what we know and what we don't know. When we make mistakes, admitting it. Two-way communication, listening to what our audience not only needs, but what our audience wants, and having the trust of our bosses, our superiors, who are willing to let us maybe even through them as the mouthpieces at times. Do these steps in ways that will provide everybody maximum benefit. Thanks a lot.